Chapter 2. In your pattern making book, it's going to cover the form measurements and figure analysis. Recommend that you read through the whole chapter, but I'm going to talk about some of the topics here and relate them to an actual dress form so that you will be prepared with the measurements either from your dress form or on an individual person, if you choose to do that, to draft your bodice patterns in Illustrator. So chapter 2 covers taking the measurements. The form is nice and handy. You can do that yourself. She's stable, probably symmetrical, but it's always a good thing to check your dress forms to make sure that they are, because sometimes they may not be. Or if you're going to do this with your own measurements or taking someone else's, it will take two people because one person needs to be standing there to have the measurements taken. There's no way you can hold some of the measuring tape in place and get an accurate measurement. You will be distorted in your body if you're trying to hold it yourself. Alright, so page 23 starts chapter 2. You should read through the whole thing, but I'm going to go ahead and identify some of the landmarks identified on page 30 in the book. Your dress form has these as seams and some pin heads in some areas. Here's a neck edge. Center front has a seam. You have a shoulder seam, side seams. The princess line seam passes through the bust level. You have a seam under the bust, but it probably is a good idea to follow the instructions in the book of how to mark the bust level. Through here you have a ribbon identifying the waist, and then the princess seams continue on down through the skirt area. The book also describes how you actually measure up from the floor so that it is parallel from the floor to mark the horizontal balance line that is placed on the skirt, and that's utilized for many different pattern manipulations, so you need to know where that is. Other indicators too have to do with the mid-armhole, and your face plate here with the plate screw is part of helping you line those things up. So to find the mid-armhole, you would put it horizontal with your face plate, because one of the measurements is this arc from here to here. So placing pins in there helps. There's also a guideline on how to make that measurement depending on what size your dress form is, and they're usually identified there. From the top here, not to the bottom of the faceplate, but it does tell you how far down under the faceplate that represents under our arm that you would have for the depth of the armhole. So that's real important. All these lines also continue down the back. You may still need to mark the mid-armhole on both sides for the indicator of the horizontal balance line that's on the back bodice. So those are some of your landmark terms. Now, when measuring the form or a model, it goes through in the chapter and shows you, page 31 and so on, where those measurements are taken. Now on page 36 is a chart with all of those measurements. Each of those measurements are correlated to a number on the body, and when you look at your diagrams in the book, you will see that. So a measurement that goes from the shoulder down to the waist, so we know how long this is, may be measurement, actually let me check real quick for you. That is called measurement number 6 on the list of that chart. So you can see some of the standard measurements for dress forms and sizes in that chart, but there's also a blank column so that if you are taking your own personal measurements or one for a customer or client, you can record them there so that you're able to draft your patterns from that. Now, some of these measurements may be taken vertically from top to bottom. Make sure you really look at what the diagram is showing, if the measurement is passing over the bust point. Some of them come from shoulder across the body or down to center front in some of the, I think it's actually center front, so that you can develop your bodice. All right, the other direction is circumferences all the way around, and then some of the other marks are arcs. Arc means part of that circumference, so maybe from center front, the arc from center front to the side seam. Now, for recording purposes, I'm actually standing on the left side of this dress form, but if you think about the orientation of your sloper pattern, the sloper pattern is actually developed on the right-hand side of the body. So you probably should be on the right-hand side of the form taking these measurements for that. But the back bodice is actually still done on the right side of the form because you want to have the sides match up, the shoulders match up, and so on. So the slopers are developed for 1/2 of the body. Usually you can develop your patterns for just that half because the majority of them are symmetrical. If they're asymmetrical though, when you trace off your sloper, you may need to take the other side of the body. The other thing too to remember, especially if you are measuring an individual, is most people are not symmetrical on both sides of their body. So you would actually want to take the measurements for both sides of the body. They may be close enough that you can just make a sloper for that client that will accommodate both sides. They could be so drastically different that you have a sloper for the left and the right hand side of the body. That's not uncommon as well. I've worked with people like that. So you will need to get these measurements recorded prior to being able to draft your bodice in Illustrator. So have fun with this. It really will get you best reading your measuring tape. Real quick, the metal end of your measuring tape is 0. Make sure that that is what you secure with one hand. Work with the other to where you need to go on that. If somewhere along a area you may need to secure the measuring tape, even up here in the metal area, there is a spot you can get a pin. Just make sure 0 stays at your originating mark. That frees up a secondary hand to actually take some other measurements. So you can use that metal little plate and the circle there. All right, have fun with it. Thank you.